Hi, my name's Meghan. I'm a therapist and coach, and you're listening to Career Congregation Podcast. I created this podcast to inspire people in their careers. After spending hundreds of hours working with clients, one thing I noticed that so many people have in common is just how many people truly don't enjoy their work, or worse, hate what they do every day. I created this podcast to help people start to make changes in their everyday life so they too can find work they love. Every week, I speak with people who've made changes, taken risks, or built careers in ways that feel meaningful to them. These conversations are here to offer real life inspiration, perspective, stories, and practical ideas you can apply in your own life, whatever your industry or whatever career stage you're at. If you enjoy these interviews and are curious about what it's like to work with me one-to-one, you can find details of how to work with me in the show notes. Thank you and enjoy. Hello. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Career Congregation. I'm very excited to be joined this week by Brittany Stevens, dialing in from New York. Brittany is a partner at Phillips Associates. She's an attorney, and she's had quite an exciting career. So when I read her bio, I was so excited to have her on. So welcome, Brittany. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. So I just said you're dialing in from New York. Can you give everyone a little bit of like an early background, cultural background, upbringing, intro to you today?
Yes, of course, sure. So I live in New York now, but I'm from New York as well. So I grew up in the suburbs outside of New York City, Westchester County. And I come from a big family, a big immediate family. I'm one of 5 siblings.
Oh, wow.
And, we are all very lucky to be very close growing up, close now in our adult ages. I am currently living back in Westchester County, but commuting into New York City 4 days a week for my job down by in the Wall Street area of New York City. I'm an employment discrimination lawyer. I represent employees who have gone through sexual harassment, some kind of discrimination at their job, or retaliation. And I only represent employees, not employers. And I feel very fortunate that I love the work I do. And, just I'm also a mother of 2 young children. So that all of this kind of like shapes who I am.
Yeah. I love that you stressed that you only represent the employees and not the employers. So I'm always supporting the woman, excuse me. So I love that. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was important for me too, right? Like for many reasons, but I knew early on too that if I was going to go into this side of work, I really had to do it from like the employee side and not like the big company, big corporation side.
Absolutely. So what spurred that? Because I can hear from this that there's definitely like you feel very strongly about that. So what experiences contributed to that for you?
Sure. And, I have to admit, this isn't something I knew I wanted to do from like a young age, right? This isn't something that I always knew I wanted to even be a lawyer, despite having 2 parents who were lawyers. It wasn't even like a career that I, felt particularly drawn to. But now, like looking back, right, like I always, our dinner time conversations were centered on listening to my dad talk about like his cases, and he represented individuals who were injured. He's a personal injury attorney, so like types of physical injuries. So we talked a lot about that, like growing up, and I always found it interesting, but it wasn't the career that I was envisioning for myself. And then interestingly enough, I majored in business and I went to a liberal arts college. And I just thought that, you graduate with a business degree and you go into business. So I did what like every college student does. You apply to like every job across New York.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a really great job at a big bank in New York. And I just felt like sick about it. I really did. I just was so uninspired. I really was not excited about the job opportunity. I didn't even feel like my skill sets would make me successful in that career.
What title was it?
It was Morgan Stanley.
Oh no, I meant your job title at the bank.
Oh, I was going to be helping like one of these high ranking businessmen like manage
Uh-huh.
their portfolios.
Okay.
So like again, I just wasn't even drawn to this type of work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had a conversation with my dad about the job, and he gave me permission to not take it, which is
Yeah.
really thinking back like crazy, right? Like what father tells their daughter who just graduated college to not accept the job, right? But he told me, don't take it. We talked about my skill sets, what I'd be good at. And we talked about law school. And I made the decision to not accept the job, but instead to apply for law school. And, so that got me into this like world of law.
Yeah.
And, in law school, you experiment, you take different classes, you figure out like what it is you like. And I took an employment discrimination class, and it was really the first class that kind of spoke to me. Everything else kind of felt a little bit dry and, again, like not that interesting. And then I kind of used that class as my mission to explore opportunities after that in this field.
Yeah, wow. That must have been such an interesting class. I feel like in the United States, especially for like employment discrimination, I feel like you must really have your work cut out for you.
Yeah, it's really exciting work, but it's like heavy work, and a lot of my clients are individuals who have been sexually harassed or terminated because they're part of like a protected class, right? So because of their race, their religion, their national origin. I handle a lot of pregnancy discrimination matters. So, I feel fulfilled in that it does go back to what I always wanted to do, which was like helping the individual, but kind of using my skill sets of, empathy and, being able to really, you know, hone in on my communication skills to like, be the best kind of lawyer I could be.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the other reasons why I was so excited when I read your bio, I was like, I really want to have her on. It's very timely right now, obviously, like just being in the world that with for sexual harassment and Me Too, and then the obvious really big one that's going on right now. Like, do
Right.
you feel like have you experienced a lot of kind of ripple on effects from any of those things? Like I feel like something that I've noticed even as a therapist is that as more and more people come forward and sort of share like some of the horrible experiences that they've had in the workplace, it emboldens others to come forward when maybe they wouldn't have previously, because I've definitely seen that people wanting to, that have been carrying something with them for a long time, being like, you know what, like maybe I will actually get justice if I say something now.
Yes, definitely. I think like there's a lot of power in other people speaking up and feeling like you are now, the stigma is still there, but it's not as strong as it used to be. So, definitely having a lot of these cases, especially in the news, right, allows for people who are dealing with it in a less public forum to feel confident that they can come forward. And that's maybe even just coming forward to their employer, right, like lodging an internal complaint. And we're not talking about even, coming forward with filing a lawsuit or going on to the news and talking about it. I think it's just, creating a world where people feel more comfortable coming forward with a complaint against a harasser, and that in and of itself is such a a huge step forward for women and for men as well who are experiencing any kind of sexual harassment or discrimination at work.
And men, it's higher than you think with men. I mean, I know that you probably know as an attorney, but I have to say it's higher than you think with men as well.
Yes.
So, yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
We have a lot of clients who are men, and I think what's hard too, especially for them, is sometimes it's even harder for them to come forward too, right? Because the stigma of a male getting sexually harassed, whether it's by another female or it's a male, has its own set of, difficulties for them. So, sexual harassment does not discriminate. It happens in all, all companies, all genders. It's prevalent regardless.
I think that there's also a big element of the changing times of what's appropriate and what's not, because I can even reflect on experiences I had in high school, just with male teachers, making comments, to me or other girls about our appearances, that now I'm you could not say that now. And even watching old shows, even in Friends and just older TV shows, people made so many comments that it's just not appropriate now. So is there elements of that you see of older things coming forward?
Definitely. I mean, I think the worlds we live in now is very different, right? People are more aware of what can constitute sex harassment.
Yeah.
Employers may have a different perspective, saying, people are more, they're more intolerant of certain type of behaviors, and maybe people are a little bit too, people take things that could be a joke as too seriously, right? So there's always that back and forth that we're always having with the employer's attorney, right? Whereas my client's offended by something, and the other side is chill out, right? That's not that offensive.
Yeah, don't be so sensitive.
Don't be so sensitive, right? But, I think that's not fair, right? Especially a lot of the matters I'm on, right? You're talking about being physically touched, being sexually assaulted, and there is no world ever where that is appropriate conduct. People also forget too, what can constitute discriminatory action under the law. That's very different than something that could be inappropriate at work, right? There's very different standards of a hostile work environment under the law. But yeah, I think, it's a good thing that people understand more so that all of this conduct is in and of itself inappropriate, and it's just a matter of, what you feel comfortable enough doing to be able to alert the company about it.
Yeah, and I think that the other big thing is probably also generational.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. We do see, sometimes, an older man being the harasser and making these kind of comments. I'll give you an example. I had a client who was, continued to be called dear or hun or, all these kind of pet names by a much older man, right? Whereas he's, crazy analysis, but in his mind, he saw that as endearing, and he was, just saying it out of a non-sexually harassing way, where
Yeah.
she thought it was very creepy, right? Like, and told him to stop, right? Said like, okay, don't call me out of my name. My name is X. Please stop calling me like hun at the workplace,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's such a, could be an extreme example, but
Well, it could be cultural as
or
well,
it could
because
be
like
cultural,
yeah,
right?
like in the UK and Ireland, it's very normal to say love or dear. Like
Right,
it is endearing and it's
right.
sweet but
You
yeah, I
can't do
can
that here.
yeah, no, not at
Because
all.
people could be really offended by it. And I guess, look, you have to be offended by it too for it to constitute sex harassment. So if you're okay with that and, there's no, if your boss is saying my love and talking to you in that way and you're not personally offended by it, that's okay, right? Like there has
Yeah.
to be an offensive component to it. Like you personally have to be offended by it. It's a subjective and an objective test.
Well, which I guess that overlaps into like consent, right? Like if you're both cool with
Right.
it, then it's okay.
Right. Well, that's not sexual harassment if you are consenting to it. And then the issue of consent is, in and of itself a complicated term,
Yeah.
but yes, it's there's a lot to unpack in these matters.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you took this class at university and you were like, okay, wow, this is the road I want to go on. So what did that journey look like? I mean, law school is takes a little while, right?
It does. I did some internships while I was in school. I clerked for a judge. And then I got my first employment discrimination job. I think it was my second summer in law school. I worked at a very small employment firm. And, because it was a very small firm, they didn't have like, a significant amount of resources. So me as the intern, I was like drafting motions, speaking to clients all the time, and I really got a very hands-on experience. And I saw firsthand like the impact that I can make on someone else's life. And I really attribute that job to, really solidifying that this was where I should be. So after I graduated, I made it my purpose to find an employment discrimination job. Out of law school, I landed at a insurance firm for a little bit of time. Knew that was just kind of a placeholder, and I've actually then got my job at my current firm that I've been here for over 11 years. So, I feel lucky that I realized in law school that this is what I wanted to do, but when you graduate law school, you kind of have to just take whatever job you can get too, right, to start getting that experience.
Yeah. So when you officially became a lawyer, how long was that journey? And then like, what did it look like once you started?
Sure. So, I started at a different firm and I did that for, I want to say like a year. And then I came to where I'm at now, but I had to start from the bottom. When I was interviewing for this firm, I was doing per diem work. So I was doing like contract work with them just to kind of see if I was going to be a good fit. Then I got hired and I was like a junior associate. And I remained in that role for, I want to say like, 3 years or so. And then at that point, my boss, the managing partner here at the firm, was really pushing me to like lead my own cases and not just be such a junior associate. And I was thinking, well, whoa. Like I'm too young in my career. I can't like just do
How
this
old
by
were you?
myself. I was probably like 28, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
29. But I just didn't think that I had the confidence at that time to really manage the caseload all by myself. And he pushed me into it, and I'm so grateful that he did, because without having someone tell me, like, you can do this, I've been with you for 3 years, like, you're so good at what you do, and you don't need someone else kind of reviewing everything you do and holding you back. And then at that point, I became like my own, we call them like lead litigators at my firm, where I just managed my entire caseload. I didn't have anyone overseeing me. I had started to build my, a team underneath me. And about 5 years ago, I then became a partner at my firm and started just continuing to build my team. I feel like it's a good example of just like working your way up. I really started as like a per diem. I was a junior associate. I was then like a more senior associate litigator, and then I became partner. And I think having been in all of those roles as well helps me be better in my job, because even now when I'm mentoring new associates, I've been there. I know what it's like to be in that role.
Yeah. Yeah, two things that you said that both really like jump out at me that I've heard with other interviews and my own lived experience is, one, the manager that believes in you, right? Like absolutely game changing. Because what you were describing, what that was coming up when he first encouraged you to handle your own cases, was like what everyone has in early career days of imposter syndrome. Like,
Yes.
no, I'm not experienced enough yet. Like, I can't do this. But it just takes one person that really believes in you, that is ideally like in your sort of work sphere, right? And then that will give you the confidence. And I've heard so many examples of that now in interviews. So good managers are priceless.
Yes.
Like, honestly. Yeah. And then the best kind of managers are the ones, I believe, that have worked all the roles, because it's so hard to respect someone who's telling you what to do that has no idea how to do your job. Like, it's infuriating, it's insulting, it's, there's cases of like nepotism or whatever, where someone's given a job and they don't really deserve it, however they manage to land that position, and then they're bossing people around, and it's insulting,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So
I
you
just
are
feel
now
grateful.
being that great manager that you had. You're doing that.
Yes, and I'm so conscious of that. I really am. I'm like overly aware, right, of trying to just be a good mentor, a good a good attorney, and also just being able to like push people as well. I don't want people to ever feel like they cannot get to the next step in their career, because I'm
Yeah.
so aware that I had to be pushed a little bit, right? So when I see someone is completely capable of like now leading their own caseload, I'm not going to be the one to hold them back. I'm going to give them that opportunity, with the understanding that maybe they don't want that, right? Not everyone does want the responsibility of managing their own caseload. It comes with a lot of work, and there's a lot of things that come with that. But if I can push someone to that next level, and they're ready and they're willing and they're wanting it, I feel so grateful.
Amazing. Yeah. So on this journey, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people on the journey to their sort of calling, there's some sort of rock bottom moments, things that really like throw you off course, or, just rug being pulled out from underneath you, soul crushing kind of things. Was there anything that you experienced like that on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think of is not necessarily something that I hit rock bottom because it happened at my job, but really something that happened to me personally that kind of affected my job.
Yeah.
My mother had passed away now like 4.5 years ago, and this was during a time that I was really building my confidence in my job. I was really I had just become a partner at my firm like a year before. I was really branding myself as someone who was really good at what I do and was kind of like unstoppable. And then I had this huge life moment just completely impact everything. And suddenly, like, this job that I loved and meant so much to me meant nothing, right? Because it really, I didn't care anymore, because all I cared about was like this grief that I was going through. I was also at that time pregnant with my first child. So, like everything kind of just shifted. But I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? A lot of people have personal things that happen to them, whether it's having children, going through a divorce, caring for like loved ones who are sick or pass away. And all of a sudden, like your purpose in your career kind of changes, right?
Yeah.
And navigating that, I think, is really difficult.
It is. It's extremely, extremely difficult. And I think it speaks volumes that you're still in this career. So the passion that you have for it sustained despite something that is so like the most debilitating things that people experience. They say there's 5. So it's the like grief, bereavement, right? So the loss of it can be the end of a relationship too, right? So grief, divorce, moving, job loss, and what's the 5th one? Having a baby.
Okay, well, I had 3 of those happen in the same,
At the same
2
time.
months.
Yeah, those are the biggest things that just they completely alter the course of your life, and most people aren't the same ever again after experiencing those things. So that's a time when a lot of people completely change career. So it's amazing that your passion sustained for your role throughout.
Yeah, I think you're not the same, right? Like I am a very different person. My mother passed away. I had moved in November. My mother passed in November. I gave birth to my daughter the first week of January. So like all 3 of these things happened in such a quick amount of time. But I will say, like, once I kind of got out of the immediate trauma of all of that, because of the work I do, I was able to use my personal experiences to become a better lawyer, right? Like, for example, I help people navigate like maternity leave or pregnancy-related accommodations. I then needed that, right? I needed accommodations when I came back. I needed a refrigerator to store breast milk. I needed time to pump, right? Like all of these things that I was helping people before, I now needed these things. Same thing with I handle caregiver leave for people who need to take time off to care for like a sick parent. I needed that time off, right? So like all of these things that I knew the law inside and out, now I had to use it for my own needs. So I do feel like I in some ways now when someone calls me saying I need time off for X, Y, and Z, I can empathize with what they're going through. So, I feel grateful that I even have the ability to understand what they're going through, because you just don't know unless you've lived it.
Completely. And that's actually one of the things with being a therapist. A lot of places don't even let you start training until you're a little bit older, because straight out of university to start being a therapist, like people are like, what do you know?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's a second career for me, as it was for most of my peers that I trained with. But I think what is really inspiring and important about what you just said about coming out of sort of you said the trauma of all those intense experiences happening back to back, is I'm always happy, well, not happy, but when people come to therapy with depression, there's situational depression and then there's like chronic, right? And chronic is much more complicated because it's like they've kind of been that way forever, and it's much harder for them to find sort of peace of mind, happiness, and live with it. Whereas pretty much everyone who has the human experience will at some point in their lives experience situational depression. and it's where something has rocked you, and it's usually a form of grief, and it does change you. But coming out of it, like when someone comes and they tell me the reasons why they're feeling depressed, I can identify if it's situational, pretty quickly. And then it's like you can console them that like this will pass. You will feel better. You will feel different, but you will feel better eventually. And one of the things that helps the most with that is a sense of purpose. I mean, obviously you had just become a mother, so that's a pretty great.
That was a bigger purpose, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty big one. But also knowing that you can help other women, going, in the workplace. I think that that's a really important purpose. And especially throughout history, but especially right now, I just feel like what a great calling to have.
Yeah, no, thank you. And, I think also just with situational depression, as you say, right? It's not something that, you wave a magic wand and it gets better, right? Like I'm still dealing with it, but I think you're exactly right. Like I do feel like having this purpose really makes me feel, my cup gets filled because of that.
Yeah. It's the thing. It's finding the thing that gives you the reason to get up in the morning,
Right.
and get on through the day. So, and you have some pretty big ones, and that's really helpful. So, but yeah, yeah. Whether it's chronic or whether it's situational, the feeling is there, and it's not something that anyone can wave a magic wand or take a pill to make disappear. It takes time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, in your career now, so your partner, and what are some of the highlights? Like, are there any really, I don't know what the confidentiality rules are for attorneys. I know what they are for therapists. We can't really talk about anything, but do you have any like huge cases that you can talk about that it's like your pride and joy kind of stories?
So yeah, we have confidentiality as well. A lot of our matters that we resolve, we are bound by confidentiality clauses, like non-disclosure agreements.
Yeah.
Things that are usually not confidential or any kind of public lawsuits. But, to kind of answer your question, I feel like I care about all of my matters, even the ones that are less, get less
Attention.
public press, right?
Uh-huh.
I think even just in the small victories, being able to help my clients with navigate certain leaves or, navigate certain kind of discriminatory hostile work environments. I feel like everything is really a win. My firm does have a few like very public matters right now. One of my colleagues is suing Kanye West in like a big lawsuit.
Wow.
But all of our clients have their importance.
Yeah. How big is your firm?
So we are about 50 employees, which is really big for plaintiff side work.
Yeah.
A lot of, the large firms work for the defense, right? Like are employed by the company. So it's very, very rare. I think we think we're the biggest now, plaintiff side firm. So I operate in New York,
New
but we
York?
also have an office in New Jersey, an office in Pennsylvania, and an office in Florida.
Okay.
So, we're a pretty big firm, which also gives us like the resources to do the work we do because, we have to be able to upfront costs for our clients. We have like multiple attorneys staffed on each matter. So to really give like the clients the best experience possible, because it's a lot harder when it's a solo practitioner or a very small firm. They just don't have those resources like a larger firm does.
Yeah. So, from a sort of client perspective, how would someone get in contact with you, or who is your sort of standard client? Like, how do they find you? Why do they call you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, broadly speaking, like anyone that has been sexually harassed at workplace or have been terminated because of their protected class. So, you're terminated because you're pregnant, right? Usually someone will contact our firm by even just like Googling, like, hey, I let my boss know that I was needing to take maternity leave in 3 months and then I was fired a week later, right? Like, is that lawful? People are Googling these things and then they'll
Yeah.
find out, like, no, that may be lawful if you were terminated for some other non-discriminatory reason. But if the real motive behind your termination was you informing them of your need to take protected leave, then yes, that's unlawful. So a lot of people just find us because they're Googling situations that happened at work, and then realizing that it could be unlawful activity. Because you'd be surprised how many people call us not even knowing if what they're calling about is unlawful, right? Even talking about
Completely.
sexual harassment, right? Like, my boss is saying these things to me or doing these things to me. Do I have a case, right? And it could be like very egregious conduct, but not everyone is always thinking in that like litigious mindset, right? Which
Not
which
at
is good to
all.
see.
Yeah.
So, I think that's probably how most people do find us, is just by
Okay.
realizing that there's something off at their workplace and wanting to even just speak to someone to validate what they're even going through.
So if they Google, like, what would be if like the keywords that you would want to come up for on Google that people are searching, you know?
Yeah, well, I deal with a lot of pregnancy matters,
Okay.
discrimination, and a lot of sexual harassment. A lot of my clients are getting sexually harassed by like some C-suite executives. I represent a lot of like executive assistants who are in these very close situations with C-suite executives where the lines tend to get blurred as far as like
Hmm.
what's professional and not professional. So, that's kind of where my main focus has been in the past few years, is dealing with these, more high powered men who are preying
Yeah.
on their, subordinates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that people would learn, right? Especially like now that things are more talked about in the press, but people are human, and companies sometimes protect the bad actors.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we see this like pattern and practice where someone makes a complaint against someone at work, and instead of the company properly investigating it and taking like appropriate remedial action, instead we see the company protecting them and allowing this harasser to continue harassing people.
Yeah, that makes me think of that show that was on Apple TV.
The morning show.
Yeah, I only watched the first season, but it was by the end I was like, "Oh my God, this is so messed up." And sadly, like if someone's made a movie or a show about it, it's usually not completely fictitious.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't watch the show, but that's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like systemic in the company from like the top of the board all the way down to like the young, fresh-faced, beautiful interns coming in being taken advantage of, basically.
Right.
Like, yeah, sadly. But do you think that there's like a shift? Do you think that things are maybe the tide's turning a little bit on that front or not?
Um, the tide is turning in that, like lawmakers are more aware that this is happening, and like the laws are evolving to help employees more. Um, the interesting thing about practicing in New York is that our laws are very favorable to employees. I can't say the same
Yeah.
for people who are getting harassed in Florida or Texas or other states where it's just very different.
Yeah.
Um, excuse me. And while we do have like federal protection, which can protect like everyone, the federal standards are significantly higher, and it's a lot more difficult to bring claims. So, everyone kind of looks at state and city specific laws. So,
Yeah.
New York City is a really favorable place for employees as far as if you're getting discriminated against, what you can do and what kind of remedies you have available to you. But like I said, we also practice in Florida, and it's night and day with,
Yeah.
the same fact pattern. What would happen if a judge or a court would see those facts? Would they dismiss the claim? How would a jury interpret that? It's just very state specific as well.
Yeah, so you presumably, so you have to take the bar in every state that you're in. Is that how it works?
So when I was admitted, yes. Now you
Okay.
can kind of waive into certain states,
Okay.
which you always were able to do. But now it's a little bit easier. But there are certain states, like Florida, for example. I would have to take the bar to get admitted into Florida, which is months and months and months of studying just to be able to practice there.
So frustrating. I see this a lot. Well, with everything in the US, I just find it's so complicated with the state to state licensing, because it's the same for being a therapist. And I know a lot of people in real estate as well, and law. It's so frustrating if you wanted to move states. It's like you really have to
Right.
start all over again. Yeah.
Right, unless you can waive in. There are certain states, like I can waive into New Jersey pretty easily. But you have to learn those laws too, which is, you can't just start practicing. Like there's a lot of differences in the laws and like the prerequisites for being able to bring claims. So yeah, you
Yeah.
really need to be aware of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a pretty big firm now, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Where is everything sitting now for you? Where you're at professionally and outreach and all of, like, what are your goals now going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now I'm lucky enough to have built like a pretty large team that I have, about 6 attorneys that work under me, and I have, staff, and I'm really able to kind of help them in a more macro way with like case development and strategy. I love talking about the work I do. My
Yeah.
firm just hosted our first ever employment discrimination, sexual harassment conference last month in February in Miami. Like we gathered plaintiff side practitioners from across the country for like a 2-day conference talking about strategy, different areas of the law that we need to continue to push forward, talking about different like practice point tips. And I helped with that conference a lot. And something now moving forward, I'm so excited about, right? To be able to have this like annual conference, to be able to continue to push forward, the way we look at these laws, I think is so great, especially when you're gathering attorneys from across the country, right? People have different experiences, people have different knowledge. So that's something I want to continue like nurturing, is that outreach of, conference building.
Okay. Yeah, so like networking kind of like through event sort of space.
Sure, yeah, networking, but I also love I love what I do too. Like I will never be able to like give up just working on my matters, and I still like
Yeah.
manage my own caseload. So although I like help other people with their caseloads, like I have my own caseload, and I love being able to have that contact with my clients and being able to resolve cases for them if that's what they want, or to litigate cases for them if that's what needs to happen.
So your like long-term goals, do you see yourself in like, because you're still quite young to have accomplished everything that you've accomplished in like 25 years. Do you think you'll still be doing what you're doing, or do you think you will have taken a break or written a book or made a movie?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'll still be doing this. I would love to be able to have all of that too, right? And if I can write a book,
Yeah.
if I can have these other things happen, that would just be a dream. But I think right now, like my focus is on like continuing to build, build my career at this firm and to grow the firm. I've been like helping a lot with the management side of my firm. So being able to, obviously grow even here within the firm, take more of like a managing partner role here. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to stop what I'm doing. So, I hope, by the time I'm 65, I'm still doing this.
Yeah,
I think I look younger than I am, but yeah.
I you do look very young, but that's, I mean, still, you still have like a lot of career ahead of
Yep.
you, but I completely relate to that. Like from as a therapist, I will do lots of other things, including podcasts and publications and all kinds of stuff. But like my bread and butter, like the core of like helping people and outreach and all of that, it goes back to the one-to-one. Like I will always have at least a few therapy clients as long as I am able to,
Right.
continue do that. I appreciate that. So if you look at your career then as a whole up to your ripe age of 40, what would you say has been like the most important like kind of foundational advice that you've learned? Like if you could go back to yourself when you lost your mother right before you had your baby, if that was kind of the lowest point you can think of, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would tell myself to give myself grace. You don't have to have everything together all the time. Your priorities are going to shift throughout, different times of your life, and that's to be expected, and that's okay. And you can't be everything to everyone at the same time. So, for me right now, my number one priority is being a mother to my two children, but I also have this like very fulfilling career. And sometimes they conflict with each other, but other times they're just, running parallel. I'm, working my day job, and when I go home, I'm mom, but I'm also still mom when I'm here. If something comes up with my child, like that's where I need to be. So I think just, I always thought that, you know, all of these things that were happening were just, there was a bunch of balls being thrown in the air and I had to catch everything. But like the reality is that I'm not going to be able to do all of it at once, and that's okay. And I have to make peace with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one because there's a lot of people running around with like, a million things that they're juggling. Like people come in first sessions, and they're so dysregulated and like don't even know where to stop and what to focus on. So, yeah, completely. Well, if people want to find you and work with you, aside from a Google search, where is the best place for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. I've been posting a lot there as well. It's under Brittany Stevens Alper, Alper, which is my married name. You can, direct message me on LinkedIn. My name and email is also on my website. So if you go to phillipsandassociates.com, you should be able to contact me directly. I
Okay.
offer free consultation. So if you're going through something awful at work, you can reach out to my firm. Like I said, we do free consultations. So you don't have to feel like you're calling and you're going to get billed for just even inquiring if this is something we can help you with.
That is, I wish that all law firms would do that because from my own lived experience, not from workplace stuff, but like with housing stuff, historically, like especially growing up in London, like there's some really dodgy landlords out there, and I know so many people who have. I'm like that doesn't seem okay. And then I had a really bad experience with a landlord a few years ago, and like it was really hard to get advice. I did ultimately get advice from a professional who assured me that it was very illegal what I had experienced, and then I was able to take action. But I think that for all types of legal matters, like firms should all offer free consultations. It's so helpful, and like otherwise it's almost discriminatory in itself if to not, because then it's like basically we can only help you if you're rich.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's such a deterrent, right? It's scary enough having to like call someone after you've been terminated.
Exactly. Or
And
through anything
or
traumatic.
through
To call
anything
and like
traumatic.
yeah.
So, like, you're already having the courage to call a lawyer, to then be told, like, you have to pay for this phone call is just, adding extra stress to an already stressful situation.
Yeah, I remember making a phone call to a firm, and like I was so nervous because I was like, do I look like an idiot? And my voice was all shaky, and they were
Yeah.
like, oh no, it's good that you called. And it was really nice that there was someone receptive who was able to take on what I said, but that wasn't my experience with every place. A lot of people are like, oh, just call this advice line.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
Right.
is usually not very helpful.
No.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thank you so much, Brittany. This was a really good conversation. So,
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was
yeah,
great.
and yeah, have a lovely rest of your day in New York.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Career Congregation. I hope it gave you something to think about or inspired you in some way. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to like, subscribe, or share this episode with someone you think it might resonate with. Every bit of support helps. If you know someone who you think would make a great guest, please send them my way via the link in the show bio. And if you'd like to support the show and the work that I do, you can buy me a coffee via the coffee link also in the show bio. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week for another conversation about all things career.